Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. Just sitting there thinking, announcing about Bryce having a little one, thinking about Jackson having a little one, and the more I think about that, the older I feel. I thought about having some boys in the teenage class, and then Ben had a family, Caden got a family, Jacob's got a family. Then you go through with Bryce and Jackson. Now they got family. Boy, I'm just getting older every moment. Drew? We'll do. Better yet, after I've got a lesson coming up. Probably you stay away from that. Stay away from marriage. No, don't stay away from marriage. I said that wrong, didn't I? So it can mean trouble sometimes. But it is funny just to think about how time flies by and how. Just in a blink of an eye, a lot of things changes. As I just read, we need to redeem the time because it's going fast, like a vapor, as the Bible says. Let's look this morning in Luke chapter 10, and we'll make some comments referring to this passage of Scripture. In Luke 10, beginning in verse 38, it says, "Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him and said, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me.' And Jesus answered and said to her, 'Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her.'" Let's kind of set the scene here. Jesus and the disciples are coming into a village. Martha greets him, of course, as the Scriptures say here, invites him to her house, and they're going to prepare a meal, which is great. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, think about this. We all know what this is like. You're having company coming over. Say you're having the preacher come over, his family. What do? You clean, or anybody actually. It's like our house. If you got anybody coming over, there's cleaning, there's cooking, there's all kinds of things going on. And why? Because you want to be hospitable. You want to make sure that your guests are cared for. You want to make sure that everything is just right. But think about sometimes what's happened. You worry about all that, you get that ready, you're cooking, you're doing all this, you're making sure that everybody is served, everybody has what they need, then you finally, I guess, sit down to eat, and then by the time you do that, they're done eating because you've done served everything and done everything and worried about everything, and then it's time for dessert, so you have to get up and do dessert, then you have to see that that's done, and you're trying to make sure that your guests are as comfortable as they can be and to have everything that they need. But then what happens? Do you enjoy it? You having fun? Do you remember even what happened? Did you take time to sit down and have a conversation? Did you take time to sit down and visit and enjoy what is taking place? Before you know it, that's gone. And you did a lot of good things. You did things that are necessary. You did things that needed to be done. But the result of what you were doing didn't really help you for the purpose of what you were doing, did it? So think about Martha here. You've got Jesus coming to your house. This is Jesus coming to your house. I mean, you're going to do everything you possibly could be. There's going to be scrolls laid out on every coffee table. Make sure he knows you're reading them. Make sure, you're going to do everything you possibly can do. And just picture Martha here. Mary's here. They come in. She's in here cooking. She's doing everything that she could. They're in there. Jesus is teaching. Mary's there at his feet. She's listening to him. Martha's in the kitchen, and she's just, she's just whooping everything up. She's cooking everything, preparing everything. And the more she's doing that, she's starting to think. The more upset she's getting. I'm not hearing what's going on in there. Mary's in there. Mary's going to come in here any moment now. She's going to come in here and she's going to start helping me. And she's whipping up the batter. She's doing all that. Why isn't Mary in here now? Why's not Mary coming in? She's peeking around the corner. So what's she do? I bet in there in the room in which they're listening to Jesus, I bet they start hearing some pots and pans. I bet she's getting louder with it. I bet she's making a little more noise on about what's going on. She's wanting Mary to hear her about what's happening. Mary doesn't come in there. So the more she's preparing, the more upset she's getting. The pans are getting a little bit louder. She's still peeking around the corner. Now she starts looking at Jesus. Aren't you going to say something? I know He hears me in here. I know He hears me doing this. How do these people think they're going to eat unless I'm in here cooking it? You know, I'd like to be in there, but I've got to be in here preparing this. I've got to be getting this ready. Sounds like good things are happening in there, but they've got to eat. Could you imagine them coming to my house and me not having anything for them to eat, me not having anything prepared for them? I've got to have all of this done. I mean, can you just hear this going on? And all of these are legitimate things. These are good things. She's supposed to be doing this. She's supposed to be hospitable. You know, that's part of what we do. You want your guests to feel comfortable. This is Jesus here. I've got to make sure everything is right. Not only is it Jesus, He's a friend. He's here. I've got to make sure these things are right. But Mary's not coming in there. And she starts, looking at Jesus. She starts seeing that, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's happening here. Look at verse 40. If you look at verse 40, notice what she says. But Martha was distracted with much serving. She approached Him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore, tell her to come and help me. So her frustration has turned to Jesus. Lord, notice what she says. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Do you not care that I'm in here by myself doing this? Do you not see her sitting there? Do you not hear me in here? Do you not care? Now, can you imagine asking Jesus that question? Don't you care? Don't you care? But notice what she says. Therefore, tell her to help me. Oh, she's got her now. Jesus is going to tell her. And I'm sure she's expecting Him to say, Mary, I appreciate what you're doing here, but you need to go help your sister. You know, it's kind of like one of your kids come up and say, can you tell the other Mama said? You know, if you tell them Mama said, that means you got to do it. Now they're saying, Jesus, can you tell her Jesus said? If you say Jesus said, she has to come and help me. That's what she's expecting Jesus to do. Now she's in here doing all of this. You know, she's preparing, she's doing all this, and I know this has got to be getting to her. You know, I'm kind of like this. I'm not one that is going to tell somebody that they need to be doing something they're going to do right away. I'm doing it, and if they're supposed to be helping me, I'm going to get loud in doing it. You know, it's like if one of the kids were supposed to help me in the morning do something, and I'm out there doing it, and they're not out there doing it because they're still in bed, I'm not going to come wake you up. But it's going to be a different story once you wake up to come out and help me. Then there's going to be another conversation and some consequences and some other things. But it's not my job to come in there and wake you up. You should already know be doing it. But I'm going to let you know that I'm frustrated with it when that happens. You know, we all get in those situations. We all have those things to where, you know, I'm doing what needs to be done. Why aren't they seeing that? And that's what she expected, I believe, from Jesus, just to say, Mary, you need to go help your sister. You know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Go help her. Jesus, tell her. Tell her, Jesus. Don't you care? Don't you care that I'm in here doing this? Now, as this goes on, you know, I think this is pretty strong words from Martha. You know, tell my sister to help me out. Don't you care? But notice what Jesus says to her. Notice what His response is. And Jesus answered, said to her, Martha, Martha, you are troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her. I like how Jesus answers this, because He don't scold Martha. Notice what He says to Martha. He says, you're worried and troubled about many things. He recognizes, He knows what she's feeling. He knows what she's facing. He knows the frustration. You're worried about many things. So He's recognizing the problem. Today's standard, you'd be saying he recognizes her feelings. You know, that's a big thing today. And he's recognizing that. He's recognizing how Martha is feeling. And he's got the suggestion. Look at the suggestion. You're worried about many things, but one thing is needed. You're worried about all of these things when there's only really one thing that needs to be done. All these things, Martha, you're doing are good. There's nothing wrong with them. But there's really only one thing that's needed, and here's where the problem is. You're taking something that's good, but you're making a bad choice based on those good things when you should be doing something better. Should be doing something better. Yeah, brother, I acknowledge you're worried about you're troubled about a lot of things. You know, I understand there's going to be some point we got to eat. And you're troubled about all this, but there's only one thing that's needed. Now, here's the thing. There's so many things that we can get distracted. Because notice, it actually goes back. Can you go back? I don't know if I went back, but can you go back to that? Notice, it says Martha was distracted. Martha was distracted. She's distracted by all of these good things, these things of necessity at that time in her mind, to be the hostess that she needs to be, to extend the hospitality that she needs to extend, to be the gracious host, because she's trying to do the right thing here. Jesus and these people are in her home. She's going to feed them. She's going to care for them. But somebody's got to do something to get ready for it. So they're good things, but notice, she was distracted. She was distracted by all of these good things, and she wasn't doing the one thing that really at that moment was important. Now think about this situation that she's in. Jesus isn't going to be on this earth that long. His ministry here, there's a lot that's happened. So what he's saying, they need to be listening to it right then. At this moment, if you put it into the immediate context, listen to what I'm saying, we can eat in a little while. You know, which is more important? Cooking this big feast to have everything ready, or listening to me and then maybe getting us some peanut butter and jelly in a minute? You see, I'm adding some things here, but the point is, Martha was distracted by things that wasn't bad, but the choice that she made to be distracted with them when she should have been concentrating on something else, that's where it became bad. And we can actually turn it even farther than that. We can take unsinful things and make a sinful choice about them, can't we? Now, I'm not saying this is what Martha is doing here when it comes to sin, but you can take things too far and be focused on the wrong things. You can be distracted. Now, there's a lot of things in this world that can distract us. Think about all that we do. We've got so much that's pulling at us. So much. There's so many things now that used to be luxuries or necessities now, aren't they? And when they become necessities, they become priorities. And when they become, priorities, that means that's what we focus on. It's almost like all of these things are just yelling at us all day long to where we can't focus on the one thing that's truly important. It's like taking care of a house, but not taking care of a home. We can do this in our congregation. We can take care of the house, but we don't take care of the body. We can focus on the wrong things. We can be distracted by the wrong things. We can do this at home. We've got so many things that, okay, I've got this house now. I've got this property now. I've got this car now. I've got all these things, so I've got to take care of it. I started thinking about this. I get Mondays and, if I'm lucky, every other weekend off. Those days are consumed with, especially from springtime on, mowing is Monday and working around in the yard because you got to get all that done when else you're going to do it. And the weekends usually end up the same kind of way, some kind of project of something doing, because, it just creates more and more and more and more. And we're all in this. We're all in this situation to where our time off is planned around, our free time is planned around
things that we have to do. And then every day, we have all kinds of things to do when it comes to work, when it comes to our home, when it comes to cleaning, when it comes to mowing, when it comes to take care of a job, when it comes to our big distraction today, which is the phone. I mean, how much distraction is that today? And there's going to be a lesson coming up on that. I started researching some things about distraction, and phone came up all the time. I thought that needs to be a whole lesson. So I'm going to think about how to present that before I get all the husbands in trouble. But we get distracted by things. Matter of fact, there were 3,000 deaths in 2024 because of distracted driving. 3,000 deaths. Over 400,000 crashes with injuries. Distracted. Distracted driving. What do you think that distraction was? What? Phone. Texting. Or being on the phone. Matter of fact, 47% of people admit to texting and driving. So about half the people you meet on the roads on their phone texting. Looking at their phone and not looking at the road. Does that worry you? You know, that should worry us, you know. Believe me, if you pass me on the road, there's a lot of other things I'm distracted with besides driving that don't have to be just a phone, so be worried anytime you see me. But my motto is, whatever happens behind me, I just keep driving. I don't look back. And that way, just, you know, long as if I turn my radio up, as long as I don't hear it, I just keep driving. So no matter the honks, the crashes, whatever. But it's distracting. But think about it. At that moment, what's important? At that moment, it's important that you have your eyes on the road. Not just for your benefit, but for those that are around you, right? So, you know, it's not about, is it wrong to be on the phone? No, not in and of itself. But can I make a choice that's wrong being on my phone because I need to be thinking and focusing on something else? Yeah, and it's like that with anything else. So as we go through life, we've got to realize what is more important. You know, what is more important than what's going on at the moment. And it does have to be spiritual things. It can be in our home. You know, I just had one of my grandchildren ask me just a few minutes ago, can I go home with you today? And I always try to never say no. You know, how do you say no to a grandkid? But I was thinking in my mind, you know, I've got to change the tail light in my mom's car. I got to do this. I've got to do that. Tanya's going to be gone, so that means I'm going to be with all of it. Because if one asks, then they all come. So I'm going to be by myself with all of them. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I don't know about this. You know, they can have me tied up till Tanya gets home, and sometimes they do. But I'm thinking, you know, I'm going in my mind all these things that I got to do or could go wrong. But at that moment, what's really important? There's going to be a time when they don't want to come to G-Dad's house. You know, they've got better things. They've got friends. They've got better things to do, you know. So it's like a guy told me one time, you know, I was complaining about, you know, all the things. We got to have the kids here. We got to have the kids here. We got to do this, and we're doing this. He said, there's going to come a time when that's going to stop. And you're going to miss it. And there was. I can remember the time that stopped. They had their own license. They could drive themselves. They could do, you know. So you start thinking, what's important at the time? We're worried about these many things, but there's only one thing that is needed. Now, let's put this in our congregations in the church itself. We can do this. We may not do it intentionally, but we can do this. Just because we're here doing something, and we're distracted by all the things that we're doing, don't necessarily mean we're focused on the right thing, does it? We've got to make sure we're focused on the right thing. Just because our calendar is full of things that we do at church doesn't mean that we're focusing on the right thing. We can take care of the house, but not taking care of the home. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing instead of so distracted about everything that's going on and think we have to have everything in the world going on when we're not focusing on the one thing that's needed. Everything that we do in this congregation, we ought to ask ourselves, does it cause us to focus more on God? If it doesn't, we need to ask ourselves why we're doing it. Now, fellowships do that. You know, Retreats do that. Coming together do that. I mean, fellowship is a big part. I'm not saying, okay, we can't do anything but come together and study. Fellowship helps the body learn each other and grow and be closer. But what I'm saying is, we can't be so distracted to where we're saying, oh, I've got something else I got to do over there. It seems like we're in the parking lot all the time. That can happen, and I've seen that happen. And we can do that in our homes. We're so distracted in our homes to where our children are there, you going to pay attention to me? Your spouse is there, hey, you going to pay attention to me? We've got all of this that's going on, but what's needed at that moment, we're not focusing on, because all these other things are screaming at us to where we're so distracted. It's not that they're bad things. Martha here is not doing a bad thing, but she's distracted away from the one thing at that time that's needed. She's worried about her guests being comfortable, her guests being fed, her guests being took care of, which are all good things, but she's missing the words of her Lord. And Jesus tells her in verses 41 and 42, He says, which I will not take away from her. Says, Martha, I know you're worried about all these things, but I'm not going to take away from Mary that one thing that's needed. So we have to ask ourselves, that same thing. Are we taking away from the one thing that needed, whether it's focusing on God, whether it's focusing on our family at the time, or focusing on what we're supposed to be focusing on at the time we should be focused? Because time is fleeting. I mean, as I said, these kids are growing up. They're having families of their own, then they'll have families of their own. And time goes by quick. What are we missing because we're distracted by all of these other good things, but we're missing the thing that is needed? Look with me, if you will, I just read a few moments ago, Ephesians 5. So then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Why? Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. We've got to redeem the time. This time right now, this is one time we know for sure that we're not going to get back. What are we doing with this one time? This one time that we have. That's why the Bible in Deuteronomy talks about teaching our children when we rise up, when we lay down, when we're walking, we're doing this. We've got to find time for that one thing that's important in the life that we live in. And God's not telling us, Jesus is not telling Martha, quit living your life. Martha, quit doing all the things that you're doing in your life. Martha, you're a bad person. You're doing all these bad things. Jesus didn't tell Martha that. We're talking about good things that can distract us from the better thing. That's what we have to look at. That's what we have to realize, and we have to redeem the time to do that. Notice in Luke 8, verse 14. Now the ones that fell among thorns are those who, when they have heard, go out and are choked with cares, riches, pleasures of life, and bring no fruit to maturity. What happens to the Word? The Word can get choked out. How can it get choked out? By all the cares of the world. Riches in itself isn't bad. Pleasures in itself isn't bad. These things aren't bad. It's things that can choke out the Word, because we put these things above that. We got time to, I bet if I went around this room and asked a few questions, I'm sure I could get an answer for almost everyone. If I asked something about politics, if I asked something about some kind of current event, some kind of war, some kind of policy, I could get all kinds of answers, and you can show me all kinds of things that you've looked up and seen about it because your phone's dinged all week long about it. Or if I asked about some current event around our community, you can tell me because you got on there to look. I may not know what's going on in my own house, but I can tell you what's going on in somebody else's, or what they're portraying it looks like. All right? Yeah, we hate to say it, but we can shake our head on that. We know these things because that's what we get. That's what we get bombarded with. That's the point. That's what it's trying. This world's trying to do. That's what Satan wants us to do, is get so caught up in everything that's going on that it bombards us so much that we forget about the things that are needed, especially the one thing that is needed. But if I asked, what'd you pray about? Or what'd you study about? Or what conversation did you have with your spouse? What conversation did you have with your children? What conversation did you have with your grandchildren? I took them here and we did this. I didn't ask where'd you go, what events you were involved in. What'd you see on this app or this social media that you think you have to have your family involved in now, or that you're doing now, that's got your calendar so full? I want to know what you stopped and what conversation you had about teaching them about life, about understanding about each other, about life, about your day, about what... I mean, this affects all of us in a lot of different ways. We all have distractions, one form or another, that aren't bad. But when you get 50 of them, 100 of them, every single moment of the day bombarding us, how do you decipher through all of that? And that's what this is talking about, how it chokes out those that are around. Look in Matthew 14. And I've often wondered about this, and let's apply it to what we're talking about. It said, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and called him and said to him, "O ye of little faith, why do you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." And one thing that I've always thought when I read and think about this passages is, he's Jesus, he's walking on the water. We have instances of him calming the storm. He could have made that sea like concrete for Peter to walk out on, and it be as smooth as glass, not a single bit of wind or wave, couldn't he? He was Jesus. What was he able to do? Titus talked in his class this morning just about, even now, what is Jesus able to do and what's he doing? What was Jesus able to do there? He's walking on the water. He's Jesus. He could have made Peter, but he didn't. He allowed it where Peter could walk on the water, but he didn't stop anything. You know why? You know what he's telling Peter and he's telling us? There's going to be distractions everywhere. There's going to be things that try to take your attention away from me everywhere. Keep your focus on what it needs to be. You're going to be distracted by many things. You're going to be troubled by many things. But there's one thing that is needed. And that one thing is stay focused on me. And if Peter would have done that, he wouldn't have started sinking. But what did Peter do? Peter got distracted. Peter got distracted by what was around him. And when he started focusing on what's around him, he started to sink. And friends, there's a lot of us that are sinking. Myself included, we're sinking because we're so distracted by the world, by everything that's around that we think is so important at that moment because it's demanding our attention at that moment when we need to stop and say, there's one thing that's needed. What is it? What is it at this time? Well, of course, it's Jesus, but it's about everything that Jesus teaches us that we should be focusing on. And don't get so distracted by the good things. Now, we could talk about all the bad things that distract us, but I think the problem is the good things. I think the problem is what Martha had, these good things that we need to do. But what happens is, like it was going to happen to Martha, is you're going to miss the purpose of Jesus' visit. You're going to miss the reason He's in your home. Just like sometimes we miss the reason company's in our home. We do so much to prepare for them. We're so busy while they're there, we don't just sit down, how you doing? Glad you're here. Don't we? I'm the same way. You know, we want to make sure things are like they're supposed to be, and we get distracted by a lot of different things that we think is important. You know, when I'm off work, I think a place that's been in business for over 100 years can't survive without me being gone one day. So I have to check and see what's going on, what's happening. They're doing something right, they're doing something wrong. What's going on? Is there something there I'm going to miss? And when I'm there, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. We all do it. But sometimes we don't focus on the right things. And one more passage, and it's a little lengthy, but I think it still goes with the point. In Luke 14, it says, Then he said to him, A certain man gave a great supper and invited many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to those who were invited, Come, for all things are now ready. But they all were with one accord began to make excuses. The first said to him, I bought a piece of ground, and I must go and see to it. I ask you to have me excused. And another said, I bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going to test them. I ask you to make me excused. Still another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and reported that these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go out quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city, and bring in the poor and the maimed and the lame and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you have commanded, and still there is room. Then the master said to the servant, Go out into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste of my supper. Now, the immediate context is him making a point to the Jews and them not accepting the Gentile and him turning to the Gentiles. But look at what's taking place here. He's inviting them to this great banquet, this feast. And all the excuses they give were good. I've just bought a piece of property. I've got to go see to it. I've got to take care of it. There's things I have to do on my property. I just can't come to the banquet right now. Excuse me. The other, I bought some oxen and I've got to test them. You know, I can't just put them out in the field. You got to train them. There's things I've got to do. Don't you understand? I've got responsibilities. I just got married. I don't have time for anything now. I got married. I've got to figure out how to be a husband. I've got to figure out how to be what I'm supposed to be. I've got to figure this whole family life out. I'm just beginning, so you got to excuse me from this. Anything wrong with having a piece of property? Anything wrong with owning an ox? Anything wrong with getting married? No, those things are good. But the point is, all those things got put before what's truly important at that time. And that's what's taking place here with Martha. You know, Martha, Jesus, don't you care? Tell her to come in here and help me. Martha, you're troubled about many things. But there's only one thing that's needed. And I'm not taking it away from her. Now, I think it's great how Jesus does this. He doesn't scold her. He doesn't yell at her. Martha, you're so stupid. You ought to be in here. You know, you ought to know better. You ought to be in here. Put them pans down and get in here and listen to me. No, he understands Martha's doing a good thing. She's doing what she thinks is good at that moment for Jesus. She's doing it for him. It's not like she's just ignoring him. He's recognizing that she's troubled, but he's telling her, you don't have to be so troubled if you just focus on this. If you focus on this other's going to take care of itself. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and what? All these things shall be added unto you. Yeah, I need to be worried about my family. I need to be worried about being the husband that I'm supposed to be. I need to worry about being the father that I'm supposed to be and everything that entails. The grandparent that I'm supposed to be and everything that entails. The employee that I'm supposed to be and everything that entails. The minister I'm supposed to be. The deacon that I'm supposed to be. The member that I'm supposed to be. The neighbor that I'm supposed to be. We've got a long list of things that are important. But if I forget that most important thing, these other things aren't going to be what they need to be anyway.
So if I focus on the one needful thing, these other things are going to fall into place. So I asked you today, I know I had a couple more, but I think we're done, is what are you distracted with? Or are you distracted? Well, I shouldn't say are you distracted. We're all distracted. I guess what we need to ask ourselves, am I letting the good things in this life that I do distract me from the needful thing that I need to do and need to be focused on? You know, we all have families. We all have lives. We've got to live in this world. There's always going to be things in this world. We got to figure out how to navigate this straight, difficult path. We got to figure out how to navigate this walking in the light. We got to figure out how to navigate this time of putting the kingdom of God first and everything that entails. Are we doing that? Well, first, we need to be in the body by believing it, having faith in the Word, by following it. Hebrews 10:17, faith cometh by hearing, hearing the Word of God. Are you going to take that Word but let the cares of this life choke it out? But if we don't, then we'll let that Word grow. We'll have faith in it. We'll live by it. We'll do what it says to do. We'll repent of our sins. We'll confess that Jesus is the Son of God. We'll be baptized for the remission of those sins. We'll walk in the light as He is in the light. We'll walk that straight road that leads to that narrow gate, understanding that it's a difficult road. Understanding it's a straight, hard road with a lot of distractions around. You know, it's not like the bowling alley. We don't have the bumpers up. It's tough. How do you navigate through all of that? There's times even Jesus, just one of the ones I read, he had to go off to himself to pray. The world was getting around him so much, he had to go off to himself and pray. He said, I need some time so I can focus on what's needed so he don't get distracted by the good things that were going on, the healings, the teachings, the questions, all those were good things. But even Jesus knew he could get overwhelmed with that. And he had to keep himself focused. So I asked you, are you willing to do that today? Or maybe you've done those things, but maybe you strayed by being so distracted about life. And you just need help and prayers of encouragement. Or maybe you've got it down pat and you just need help, keep doing it. In whatever way, we're here as a family. This congregation, we live in this world. And we all have things we have to face. And sometimes we need to rally around each other so we can block those distractions until you can heal.